Hey there, Internet. Welcome to the Hard On Gear channel, where I discuss and review my used and abused knives and gear. So here we have a knife in the QSP Penguin that I would typically never pick up for myself. There are a few reasons for that, which I'll get into throughout the video, but I'll just say for the most part, this is not anything close to my typical folding knives. The daintiest and the, I guess, least durable of my knives are maybe along the lines of the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, failed reverse flick, and the 940-2 from Benchmade, both of which are still decently hard users, but not really compared to things like the Cold Steel Recon 1 or the 8015, both monsters, both much more tanky. Those kind of tougher Spyderco and Cold Steel folding knives are a lot more my speed, and then of course a lot more your hard use fixed blades. The QSP Penguin is just a little bit less hard use approved from what I can tell, and all the reviews say it definitely holds up to a decent amount of hard EDC use. The Wharncliffe blade on this bad boy is made for general EDC slicing and cutting tasks. And as you can hear when I open that up, it's pretty solid. The hardware in there is pretty well put together, and this knife is not light or flimsy feeling by any stretch of the imagination. All I'm saying is basically you're not going to see a lot of people in the military or police carrying a QSP Penguin as their main folding knife. Purely just for the reason that it's not built to do the same thing as a lot of the hard use folders that I prefer to use. But I did pick it up because it's widely considered to be at least tied for the best budget knife of the last year and a half. This thing only costs the varying versions of it, but the D2 version of this is only going to cost you about $30 to $35 in American dollars, and something around $50 to $60 within that ballpark for Canadian. So you're looking at something that you're going to pay less than $50 for in most cases. That's probably something similar to the quality of a $100 to $150 knife. And when I say tied for the best budget knife of 2021, the only big competitor I'd say would be the Civivi Elementum. At least if you've been on YouTube in the last year and a half, and you punch in best budget knives, that's probably the two that are going to pop up the most, the QSP Penguin and the Civivi Elementum. So this isn't really an unboxing. I've had this for about 2 months, and I'm going to give you the quick rundown of some of the specs, do some size comparisons, and I guess first I'll just give my one quick spiel. You can label this as my own cognitive bias of being born of a Western civilization. You could call this virtue signaling. You could call this ignorance and uneducated political ramble. Regardless, I'm just going to say I don't really approve of buying knives and stuff like this that are coming from countries that are run by political systems that are essentially taking all the freedoms away from their people. I'm not going to name specifics because I truly don't know what goes on behind closed doors. The stuff that you can get away with when you're running an unethical totalitarian dictatorship and basically, you could kill off whoever you need to or silence whoever you need to. Nothing against the people or the individuals. It's about the political system that I don't believe in supporting more than I have to. That being said, I really did want to at least see for myself what a couple of these knives were like. I offset my conscience a little bit by purchasing them at Atlantic Knives in Halifax. That's our big knife store on the East Coast and our only real big city on the East Coast. So yeah, feel free to check that out if you're from the area or you want to order some knives from a Canadian company, and especially if you're going to order some commie China knives that you want to maybe offset your conscience like I did. Good way to maybe support a little bit of local while supporting something not so great. Anyways, that's the only time we'll mention it for the rest of the video. We're here to talk about the knife, not about the unethical policies and procedures of the CCP. Anywho, this is the very, very popular, 7 and some inch. Oh, let's take a look at the specs that are in the box, because this comes with a nice little spec card. And that's about it. The plastic wrapping and the foam and a decent little box. So on this spec card, we've got, I think, basically all the specs that you look up online. Yeah, that's just one double-sided thick card. I'll move my hog sticker and stuff here. If you want a sticker or 2 or 3 or whatever, let me know, email or Instagram, and I might be able to hook you up with a few of those. And check out the Instagram anyways if you haven't already. Post most of my videos when they show up, and as well as some other extra content. So the QSP Penguin, greetings. Thank you for choosing QSP knife. We hope you enjoy it. Here are some specifications about your knife. There are many different versions of this. This one in particular is the denim micarta with D2. This also comes in 154 cm for closer to like $100. But there are all kinds of various scales and colors and patterns and materials that you can get. This one, like I said, denim micarta, D2, Wharncliffe blade. It's saying here the blade is just over 3 inches in length. You're probably maybe I think it's like 3.25 or something like that total, and you're losing about 1/4 of an inch or so with this sharpening choil at the front. As you can see, the blade is starting to get a little bit, not quite patina, but definitely got some a little bit of discoloring on it and a couple of rough spots, just because D2 was not the most stainless, and I had carried this for about a week or so in my pocket, and it got a little bit of moisture and I never oiled it afterwards. So you have to watch out if you live in a salty environment like myself, or if you leave this thing wet, it can get a little bit of rust spots, and eventually that will start to permanently stain. The copper washers, which run extremely smooth. You've got the big old thumb studs here, which are extremely accessible, and for a small knife, this thing not only fits in the hand well, it's pretty easy to deploy. I say that and then I fudge the deployment, but it's pretty easy and positive on the deployment, even for something that typically I would feel I'd have to really readjust to my hand. But you can reverse flick this just as easy as you can thumb flick it, or you can thumb wheel it open. And like most knives, as they get worn in and broken in, they run smoother, and I haven't really broken this one in like a lot of people who use this as a daily EDC. But just over 7 inches overall with a 4-inch handle. When it's closed, that 4-inch profile sits in the pocket quite nicely. Comes with a deep carry pocket clip. When you take those 2 screws out, initially I think I started to take the scale off, thinking that's how the pocket clip came out. But once those 2 screws are removed, you just slide that up out of that slot and into the slot over there if you're left-handed like myself, and then put the 2 screws back in and you're good to go. So aside from that, there's a couple of body screws and then the big pivot screw. I believe that pivot is a T8, and T6 is for the small body and pocket clip screws. When the time comes to do my full review for this, I'll make sure I review all the specs and all the different variations and details and give you all of that in full detail. But for this overview, we're just going to rip through those specs real quickly. So, I see a little bit of tape in there from a little bit of pocket use. Hello, tape. Might need a knife. Haha. Where's the, my newest acquisition, the Benchmade Superfreak. Very much enjoying this. And again, much more the type of knife I would typically buy. Wide open blow-through design. You can see you've got your back spacers, same stainless steel look as your full stainless steel liners. I see we've got another piece of tape in there that I did not notice. So just going to fish that out right quick. And you've got a very large lanyard loop hole right down here at the base. Kind of a little bit of an off shape, but that is probably something I would consider doing with this knife, where it is a little bit smaller and it would probably be a little bit more comfortable in the hand with a little more grip around the pinky, but also be a little bit easier to withdraw from the pocket because that deep carry clip does sit in there quite nice and quite deep. You get a liner lock with some nice jimping here. It's got a decent cutaway, and with the jimping and that cutout, you've got a pretty easy access, and even for a left-handed fellow like myself, who's typically not gonna like liner locks too much, this one's actually quite easy to manipulate, open and close and all that. Like the opening obviously has nothing to do with the liner lock, but it's pretty smooth operating and still seems to be, obviously that wasn't the best deployment, still seems to be pretty safe sitting behind the hang of the blade. And I guess that really is the only non-ambidextrous feature on this knife, is that liner lock. The rest of it is very lefty friendly. The only thing I had to do is switch that pocket clip around, and the thumb studs are ambidextrous, everything else is ambidextrous. Yeah, you're looking pretty good. What's on the back side of this card? Just a little write-up and a barcode and a website. Okay, so basically, yeah, here's our specs. I think the only thing I didn't mention is just the satin D2 blade, which if you kept this a little more polished would look a lot more like a typical satin finish. I think that just about covers us for the specs. So there's a little bit of jimping on the back here too that I didn't mention. And again, the liner lock. You can kind of see what's going on there. Very simple little bar there to hold the tang in place. And once that slides in the back of that base of the blade tang, it feels pretty damn sturdy and secure. Liner locks, of course, the only thing you got to watch out for is as you're moving and twisting and turning, if you're prying or you're trying to really scrape something, you don't want to do something stupid and accidentally disengage the lock and close it on your finger. Especially with this fairly hefty and weighty Wharncliffe blade, that could probably cleave a finger or two off without a whole lot of effort. It came fairly sharp out of the box, but like I mentioned, I have used it a little bit. I don't know, yeah, it'll pop a few hairs off still. It's still got a decent edge on it. It's D2, so it's going to hold quite a decent edge. It won't be as easy to sharpen as some of the other steels, like ASA 8, ACR13, some of the stuff that's maybe going to not hold as good of an edge anyways. But D2, tool steel, I've only got a little bit of experience with it in my Rat Model 2, which I haven't used much. And geez, I feel like I've got maybe one. No, that might be my only D2 knife. So let's do some size comparisons. The other knife that I purchased at Atlantic Knives when I was up there that day is another from the knife from the similar area and similar all the stuff I was talking about earlier that I wasn't going to mention again. But this is the CRJB Rampart. CRJB is the subsidiary company of Artisan Cutlery, and again, knives that I typically wouldn't buy from companies I typically wouldn't support or purchase from. When I typically try my best to buy American made. And even though I know not all the parts of all these American made knives are made and manufactured in America or Canada, it's nice to know that at least a decent amount of the effort was taken to keep everything on our continent and within our own economy and ethically sourced and paying our workers appropriately and all that good stuff. What did I say I wasn't going to talk about again? Okay, so the Rampart, lot bigger when you look at it from this angle, but really it's very similar blade length and usable cutting edge, and really the same amount of actual handle that be in your hand as the Penguin. Just it's got this extra little bit of handle, which is more, I almost feel, for design than it is really the ergonomics of it. That being said, for such a simple handle design, that fits in the hand quite well. But the Penguin, same thing. For the size of it, it's just about as small as I would be able to use for a knife, because any smaller than this and it's not going to fit in my hand, and I'm going to be having to readjust and feel like it's slipping out and all that. So this is about, say, the minimum size for me as far as a knife that I would ever use and carry. The smallest I tend to comfortably get is the 940-2 or the Manix 2, which is actually my favorite folder at this time and has been pretty much for the last year. But this is about as small as I really like to get, and that's fits in my hand just about perfect. But if it was a little bit larger, I wouldn't complain. So that's your Manix 2, your Benchmade 940-2, a couple more Spydercos. How about the Pacific Salt 2 and LC200N? And why don't we look at everyone's, well, not say everyone's favorite, not my favorite, but everyone's probably the most well-known Spyderco, the Paramilitary 2, which is quite a bit larger actually than the Penguin. Since I already had them out, how about the Cold Steel 8015 and the Recon 1? Oh, that thumb stud didn't go too well there. But the Recon 1 and OS 8, my old school 8-year pocket companion. And why don't we do one more just because we can? There's the Rat Model 1. And any guesses? Yeah, Rat Model 2, which is probably your best size comparison as far as my collection goes. Very, very similar in size, blade profile, handle length, almost identical. Drop point versus the Wharncliffe, very, very different, of course. But otherwise, pretty similar size, very different feel in the hand, but they take up about the same amount of real estate. So probably if you're looking for an idea of what the QSP Penguin's going to feel like in your pocket and in your hand, I'd say imagine a slightly thicker Rat Model 2 with a course a little bit different blade. As far as what I plan on doing with the Penguin, I don't know if I'm going to end up EDCing it a whole lot. It did surprise me how well it carried and how usable it is and how fidgetable it is for such a small knife relative to what I typically prefer. But I am going to go back to it one last time and say I don't feel nearly like as good or ethical of a human being when I'm carrying this around, knowing I could be carrying something like this, or well, while this is made in Taiwan, I do believe Taiwan at the point of time that I'm recording this video, and definitely when these knives were manufactured, was currently still a free country that was paying their workers appropriately, as far as I know. So anyways, enough virtue-y crap out there. You get the point. I'm just saying, if you can try and buy stuff to support your local economy and all that good stuff, probably doesn't hurt. And North America is relatively local compared to foreign overseas dictatorships. Anyways, this is the QSP Penguin, probably the #1 or #2 most popular budget folding knife of 2021 and 2020, I guess, when this came out, sort of summer or early fall of 2021. It is very impressive, and I do understand why so many people have bragged this thing up to the high heavens. I don't know that I'm going to do anything with this other than maybe put it through some tests, and maybe I'll try and beat the crap out of it, similar to what I have recently to the Cold Steel Luzon or the Kershaw Blur. Those are two knives that I've been trying to put through their paces because I will never, and well, for the most part, I don't think I'll ever carry these. In both of their cases, they don't have the right left-hand pocket clip that comes stock with them, or the option even for the Kershaw Blur. But besides that, I'm not a big fan of the Luzon as far as a cold steel folding knife. It's not something I would typically carry for my purposes. I just put a deadly edge back on this HCR13 MOV, so I'm going to put that to the test here, and some testing videos again soon, and get a good review of this bad boy and this. So basically, I feel like the Penguin's going to be in a similar position where I'm not going to carry it a whole lot. I don't really have a ton of not that I don't have a ton of respect for it, I just don't have a lot of love for it compared to something like the Manix 2, which it'd been interesting to know how much this could take, and it would be really fun to do some hard use testing, but I just couldn't do this to my nice Manix 2, which I've come to love so much. So I will probably end up beating the crap out of the Penguin and putting it through some things that you shouldn't put your folding knives through, just to see what happens to it. Probably something similar to the CRJB Rampart. I've thought about doing other things, like maybe giving these two away or something, but it's again kind of goes against the we'll just say like the channel brand's values and kind of the integrity that I wanted to try and maintain when I started this channel, which is not really, I don't want to give away one of these knives that I don't really morally or ethically support, because what does that really say about me and this channel and what I'm doing if it's just something I'm going to use for likes and marketing and all that. So instead, why don't I use it for the likes and marketing in the method of destroying the living crap out of it? We'll see how well these blades hold up. And again, I'm not knocking the people who work in the factories or maybe even the owners of the company. I don't know for sure. I'm sure most of them are good people just looking to do a good job and support their families. Unfortunately, there's just so much crap going on over there. You just can't be certain of what you're supporting. So this has been a long, rambly, probably not as detailed and knife-centric unboxing overview as what you might have expected, but if you did appreciate it and this is content that you want to see more of, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button down below. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. There'll be some other videos popping up on the right of your screen if you want to see some of the other unboxings or knife videos going on the Hard On Gear channel. And I guess for now, this is the Hard On Gear channel, signing off.